Hi, welcome to Lupus Speaks podcast, where we shine a spotlight on lupus who are bossing it in business, inspiring others, and making a mark in the lupus community. I'm your host, Shedrica Holmes, on a mission to showcase the incredible journeys of lupus warriors turned entrepreneurs, influencers, and advocates. So get ready for empowering stories, insightful conversations, and a dose of inspiration. This is not just a podcast, it's a platform for you to dream again. So join me as we explore the possibilities beyond lupus and celebrate the resilience of lupus community. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Lupus Speaks podcast. I'm your host, Shedrica Shant'e, and today we have Miss Charisma Atkins, and I'm so excited to talk to her today. So I want you all to join her to the show and welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So, could you start by sharing your lupus journey and what it has been like being diagnosed with SLE and lupus nephritis?
Yes. Yeah, sure. So I was diagnosed by stance. I was in graduate school. I was getting my master's. And if anyone knows, the last semester of your master program, you have core exams and a lot of busy work that you have to do. I was writing my thesis. I had core exams. So I was a bit stressed, I would say. But, at the same time, I was experiencing joint pains in my fingers and my elbows, and I was popping Motrin like nobody's business and just trying to, like, make it through to get to graduation. So that's while I was in school and I was away. I was in Tallahassee. I'm from Atlanta, but I was in school in Tallahassee. And so I made it through the semester. I got home. That was the December of 2000. I got home for Christmas break and I was just tired. My parents, specifically my dad, was asking what was wrong because I'm not a lazy person. I didn't lay around like that. And I wasn't eating. I
Mm.
didn't have any strength to eat. So he just kept asking what was wrong. And um, finally, he take my word for it. So I went to sleep one night. He had already made the doctor's appointment. The next morning when I got up, I could not move. I had to call my brother to come get me out the bed, who was also at home, from college break. And he had to get me out the bed. My mom had already went to work. And so he called my dad. My dad was at work. He said that, Charisma couldn't get out of bed and she's not moving. So he called the doctor immediately and we went to Emory, just, because that's where the doctor was. And as soon as I got into the doctor's office, there was this commercial on TV for lupus. Yeah, it was like divine intervention. It was a commercial. I had never heard of lupus before. And mind you, I'm biology by trade. I was in graduate school for public health. So I was aware of diseases, communicable diseases, infectious diseases, even chronic, but I had never heard of lupus. So I was like in that office and the commercial was replaying over and over and over again. So I was sitting in the wheelchair in the office and I looked to my mom. I was like, that's what I have because they were doing the symptoms and everything. And I kind of just knew that that's what it was. And so I went back in the doctor's and he was an older gentleman and he ran the lupus test like right away. And sure enough, came back. It was SLE. He sent me to a rheumatologist that day, and the rheumatologist put me on prednisone, Imuran, and it was another drug like that day. By
Mm.
that night, I was up. Like I was up and at 'em. I was talking on the phone. I was even probably trying to plan to go out because I'm like 22 at the time.
Right.
So, you come home from school, that's what you want to do, get back with your friends and, hang out. That's how I got diagnosed. It was that simple. Like, so I'm grateful that I didn't have like the years of symptoms that I hear a lot of lupus patients go through. Mine was just, and I look back over it like now, and I've always had joint pain, like from high school. Usually it was around my cycle, so didn't think nothing of it, and I had bad cycles. So I was on, what was it called at the time? Anaprox was one of the heavy menstruation drugs, which we found later causes infertility issues. I
What?
yeah, I took that all through high school, and when I got to college, the cramps had eased a little bit, so I was on Motrin, but I was on Motrin 800 every month because the cramps were, bad. And so that's what happened. So I think I might have had lupus ever since I was like 16, possibly. That's when I can think about when the cramps got really bad. It was about 15, 16. And I would always crack my knuckles. I was always cracking my knuckles, whether it was my hands, my elbows, my fingers, my neck. I was always cracking my knuckles and my joints. So that's why I think it went back to probably I was about 15, 16. Um, but fast forward to being in college, same thing happened, had bad cramps, always once a month, like clockwork. So I always, took the Motrin to, get me through the day so I wouldn't have any downtime. And I just knew in that doctor's office when I saw that commercial. I automatically knew. So
Wow. Wow.
That's interesting.
yeah,
Just because I haven't heard of lupus before my diagnosis either. So it wasn't like a shock to me or like, because I didn't know, like the commercial just laid it out for you. So I had no
yeah,
idea what I was going to experience, when I got my diagnosis. So that was a good little heads up.
yeah, it was. And it was, in the doctor's office, you have certain commercials on replay. So it was like
Hmm.
every two commercials, it was a lupus something like, "Are you feeling fatigued? Are you tired? Do your joints hurt? Are you have muscle weakness?" And I'm in the office like, "Yeah,
Right. Well,
yeah."
you'll never forget that commercial.
Like, "Yeah, I absolutely do." So, yeah, that's
So
what
you
happened.
said that you immediately started taking the medication. So how long did it take before you were backing up and going? Like the same day or like
Same day, the
no, really?
same day. He put me on 50 milligrams of prednisone. Imuran, I wanna say, was like 150 mgs, and it wasn't CellCept, it was another. I don't know what it was. It was another, like, inflammation drug, and
Like
yeah, it was
yeah,
Plaquenil. Yeah,
yeah.
it was
Because that's
Plaquenil.
usually what they do.
And he was an older, white guy, the rheumatologist was, and he was just, like, so confirming in the office, like, really confirming, that he was just, "Don't worry about it. Um, you'll be okay, but you're gonna have to have medicine for the rest of your life, but don't worry, it's gonna be okay." So it was just he was really confirming and he wasn't concerned at all. He was like, just take these drugs every day and you'll be okay. He was just like, don't worry about it. Like, just take these drugs, for the rest of your life. Don't miss a dose and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's very confirming because I know some people give you the runaround and tell you, oh, it's not this, or, they give you all these scares up front. And,
Right,
that was good that you were reassured and they knew what they was talking about.
right. It did.
So, how did lupus teach you to focus on your goals and dreams rather than disease itself?
Um, well, I've always been pretty determined, but lupus gave me the sense of, and I won't lie, like I was scared because, everybody said it was a chronic disease. And then me being a researcher, I started looking it up and I start, seeing the statistics and seeing people, how they were responding, whether it was the butterfly rash or like having back surgery and knee surgery and even, succumbing to the illness. So I was very scared. So I went into this like flight or fight type of situation where now I was like, I have to get my master's. I have to get my master's So I went, I probably wrote my thesis in probably like a month. Like I was on go like the whole time. And so it was scaring me. Never mind the fact like I didn't have I've never had the butterfly rash. And so and I'm kind of like, I'm very particular about my face and about my skin regimen. So I was concerned about that. I definitely didn't want the butterfly rash. And so I just was like, this is a fight or flight situation. And I have all these goals I want to accomplish and I'm gonna do it. And anytime somebody told me just to slow down, I just went even harder, like even harder. Like slow down, get your rest. No, I got this, I got this to do, I got this to do. So yeah, it gave me a push, um, like a real determination push. You know, in my mind, probably subconsciously, I was like, I have to get it done before, something really bad happens. But I was just, so determined to finish my master's, get in the work field, do what I need to do, live a regular life. For the longest time, I didn't tell anybody, only my family knew. So I would say like the first 10, 12 years, nobody knew.
Wow.
Nobody knew. None of my friends knew. Not even cousins knew. It was just me, my mom, my dad, and my brother. They were only ones that knew, and maybe my aunt. But that was it.
Yeah, because my next question was gonna be, did you not have any other type of flares or anything in between where you were able to disclose that this whole time?
No, I didn't have flares for probably like the first 5 years. No flares. And when I did have flares, it was like joint pain in the fingers or the elbows, but I never had I never had like the butterfly rash. I was never not able to walk again. So it wasn't anything that would put me out of commission for, more than like 8 hours. It was just like when it would happen, I would just take another prednisone and it would just, clear up right then. So yeah, I didn't tell anybody for like probably the first 10 to 12 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard that before.
The whole thing for me is once I got the diagnosis, I wanted to complete my goals, but I also wanted to be able to mingle and congregate, because I'm mid-20s. So
Right, right.
I didn't want, my friends to look at me any other type of way or, take sympathy on me or pity on me, or, circumvent their plans just because of me. Like if they wanted to go, you know, on the trip, I didn't want them, to think like, well, maybe we shouldn't go overseas because Charisma has da 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 da. So I just didn't tell anybody. And I did what I wanted to do until, I couldn't, until I had to tell somebody because I started getting more hospital stays.
Okay.
The hospital stays were coming more frequently. So
That was like 12 years later.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
is that when your diagnosis for the lupus nephritis came around, or?
No, I was working in Florida at a health department as an epidemiologist, and I just, that we were doing blood pressure checks, and so us as a staff, we were like, well, we need to check our blood pressure to make the community feel better. And so one of the nurses checked my blood pressure, and it was high, and she just kept saying, "Are you all right? Can you see? Are you dizzy?" I was like, "No, I'm fine." And it was just super, super high. So I went to a local doctor down there and he tested it again. And he was like, your blood pressure is way too high for your age. And, something's going on. And then I told him I had lupus. Like, the health department didn't even know. And he said, well, let me check your kidney functions. And so he checked and he said, okay, they're down, but they're not, so low, but they're down. Let me run a kidney biopsy. And he ran the kidney biopsy and he came back. He said, yeah, I think your lupus has changed. It has switched and now it's lupus nephritis. And so I was diagnosed in 2001. So that was 2007. So it's about 6 years later, but still in a time frame where I'm not telling anybody what's going on.
Right.
Right. So yeah, that was it. And once he told me that, he didn't put me on any different medication. He just said, we're going to have to watch your kidneys. He put me on a blood pressure medicine to, keep the blood pressure down. But that was it. And so that's what started that.
So your treatments pretty much has sustained you all this time, and you didn't
Yep.
have to really do anything differently.
No, until the kidney got really bad, that's when I had to do something different.
Okay,
Yeah.
so can you walk us through that journey? Can you elaborate on it?
So I went, I left Florida. I came back to Georgia, largely because a lot of my friends were here, but also my parents were like, because I had so many issues in Florida with the kidney. I also contracted shingles, which was unheard of, I think I was like 27, 28. Like I had chickenpox before, but all the doctors down there were just like, oh yeah, you probably, you had chickenpox. And I had chickenpox very early. I was like 3. My mom told me. So they was like, yeah, it's about, you're going to get shingles because you had chickenpox. So nobody related that back to like the, degradation of my immune system. I just had shingles. So my dad wanted me to come back home and get back with the doctors up there because he just felt more comfortable with the doctor in Atlanta. So when I
Right.
came home, I had a flare. It was about 2009. I was only seeing my rheumatologist at the time, and I had a bad flare. And she said, I think you need to see a nephrologist. So I went to a nephrologist, and he said, yeah, your kidney's impacted. We're going to have to watch it. And he put me on some more kidney drugs to help preserve it. And everything was moving fine. And then I had a fibroid surgery. And in the fibroid surgery, it was hard. They couldn't wake me up. So they couldn't wake me up. And they were checking my kidneys, and every 30 minutes it was dropping a percentage. So they were, trying to wake me up. And so when I finally woke up, I had doctors around me, my parents around me. They were all looking at me like over the bed. And I didn't know what was going on. I was just like, what's the problem?
Yeah.
And they say your kidney function went down a lot during this surgery. So we have to call your nephrologist in to, find out what's going on. So that's what they did. They called the nephrologist in, and that's when he immediately told me like my options. He said, it's not that bad. It was still around like 50% at that time, but it was still around like 50% at that time. And he said, we have to do more kidney drugs, and we're just gonna watch you. And then he told me, I want you to get on water. He told me to get smart water. And to this day, that's the only water I drink. It's smart water. He stood by it. He was like, the electrolytes in that are the best. Don't do tap water, don't do Kroger water, no other water, alkaline smart water. So I started drinking that, taking, all my medicine, and everything was going okay for about 5 years. And then about that time, my kidney, they jumped down again. So they jumped like from 50% to about 40%. And he was like, we can either keep going like this and wait for you to get to 20% and put you on dialysis, or we can do this chemotherapy treatment that will help. And so that's why I did a chemotherapy treatment. Mind you, that knocks out all your reproductive organs. It knocks out the ability to have children, be fertile, everything. But to me, the pro outweighed the con because I was desperately not trying to be on dialysis. I was like, much like the butterfly rash, I was so scared of dialysis because I had family members that did dialysis and they never returned. So I was fearful of dialysis. And so after the chemotherapy, it worked. It jumped my numbers back up. And that's when I started working out a lot, like a lot. Before I was like walking and doing certain things. I was a cheerleader in the past, so I was active. But I got into working out heavy a lot after then. And so the numbers jumped back up and everything was smooth sailing. I was smooth sailing. I was going to the nephrologist once a month, going to the rheumatologist every 3 months. They were always, impressed, glad I did it, no problem. And then COVID. I contracted COVID.
Mm.
Contracted COVID in September of 2021. And, of course, I knew in 2020, to be extra careful, wear my mask. When the vaccine came out, I was first priority. I got the vaccine, the first and the second one, and I just got lax. It was 2021 by that time, the fall. People weren't, paying that much attention to it. We knew it was still around. But, I went out one night and yeah, I got COVID. And even after then, I went to get, tested and it came back not undetectable, but unable to detect. So I was like, I thought I was good. I was coughing and it was a bad cough. But I thought, I was good because they did the testing detected. And then I got a fever, a really high fever, and my parents took me to the hospital. They ran the test. They said I had COVID. They put me in the hospital right away. No, I'm sorry. I went back to the doctor. They did the COVID test. He said I had COVID, and he said that's why my kidney numbers were dropping. And
Okay.
at that time, I wasn't urinating a whole lot. I might have been going like once or twice a day. And when I was in the doctor's office, he said he needed a urine sample, and I could not give him a urine sample. I drunk like 3 bottles of mini water, and nothing would come out. So he told me to go to the ER, and that's what I did. I went to the ER, and then of course they ran another COVID test, and they said he had COVID. They put me in immediately. I was isolated. I was in a room. I don't know if you've seen them on TV where everyone has on a coat, a mask, glass. Nobody could enter my room. Like I was by myself in this room with COVID.
Right.
And while I was there, of course, the numbers were bad. So I did dialysis there. They had to put the port in. And I was crying a lot because I didn't want to be on
Yeah.
dialysis. So we did dialysis in the hospital. Then they found me a center. They said I had to go to the center to do dialysis. But because I had COVID, I had to be secluded. So I had to go to the center like early morning. Like we're talking like 3 o'clock in the morning when nobody was there. So I could do dialysis and be separate and not, give anybody else COVID. So that's how I got on dialysis. That was November of 2021. Yeah, November of 2021. Um, and I did hemodialysis first. And then once I got better, I decided I would do peritoneal dialysis through the abdomen because it was at home. I didn't want to be in the dialysis center. And so I did that for like 4 months and then it stopped working. They told me I had scar tissue from my fibroid surgery and my stomach was too small to pump the fluid in for dialysis. My stomach wasn't able to hold all the fluid. So I had to get off peritoneal and go back to hemo. And that was, I think, March of 2022. And so I did that from March 2022 through June 2023. So in total, I was on dialysis a little less than 2 years. But I was on the last chemo was about 9 months. I was on that. So and then I got my transplant.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, did you still have to do chemo or did you get a transplant?
I got a transplant last June. It'll be 1 year on the 15th of this month. Everything was good in the hospital. I stayed 3 days. You were supposed to stay like 7. Most people stay 7, but I stayed 3 because after I had the transplant, I could immediately urinate. And so that's half the battle after a transplant to have the kidney wake up for you. And
Okay.
mine woke up. And then I started walking around the hospital. I was trying to get out the hospital. And
Mhm.
I was trying, you gain, like they tell you, you'll gain between 10 and 20 pounds after transplant. And again, I'm so health conscious and so image conscious. I was like, this weight has to go. So I just started walking around the hospital and they would tell me to slow down, but I was trying to get out of the hospital. So I went home and I probably laid around maybe 2 days. And then I started walking around my neighborhood. Um, just, trying to get active. Again, still trying to, have the image that I didn't want anyone to take pity on me or look at me differently. So I was still trying to get back to my mode. And mind you, at the time I'm in my dissertation phase of my PhD. So
Okay.
this whole time I've been going to school, working, and school. Like that's how it's been the whole time ever since I was diagnosed, whether it was my master's program, working, getting my certificate in epidemiology, working, and then going to graduate school to get my PhD and working at the same time. So I was trying to get better so I could finish my dissertation, say I got my PhD and be done with everything. And so that's what I did. I just had that motivation just to keep pushing. I had to keep pushing. So that's what
Well,
happened.
good for you.
Yeah.
That's such a good thing. I know my story looks a lot different from that. I wasn't able to do anything like that, push through to go to school or anything until much later. So, yeah, that's awesome. So
Yeah.
that just gives everybody that notion that they don't have to stop their dreams, they don't have to give up, they can keep on. No
Mhm.
matter if they have to go through dialysis or anything, it's still possible.
Right. And I will say dialysis is scary. Um, it is, but there are certain like rules they tell you to follow while you're on dialysis. And, I was very diligent with those rules because I wanted to continue working out. I wanted to continue going to school and getting my degree and being able to hang with my friends and do family time. And I have a goddaughter and nieces, and I didn't want them to see me and get scared. So I followed the rules like to a T. So I didn't really I had a couple of days of cramping in dialysis, but not a whole lot. So I was pretty okay with dialysis. But, I do know, the horror stories of dialysis of people not being able to move and, getting sick and just unable to like live their best life at the time. So again, I was grateful that that wasn't me.
Yeah. So let's get into the ways that you advocate for yourself. How do you encourage others to do the same?
Avocation, you have to know your body. You have to know and feel what's best for you. Especially when you're in a hospital and you're on your downtimes, nurses and doctors, they know their craft, but you know your body. And so
Mhm.
you cannot let them tell you what you feel is not right for your body. You have to speak up. And a lot of times they say, black women are the hardest
Mhm.
because either we gonna cut up on you or we're not gonna listen to you. Um,
Mhm.
and on top of that, I'm a person that has a science background. So you're not gonna tell
Tell
me
you anything, yeah.
anything. Like if you tell me something, I have my phone right there. I'm gonna look it up for myself. And I'm gonna tell you if you right or if you wrong. So I won't say I had hard times in the hospital, but I did have those times where I was like, hold up, I'm not doing that. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna take that shot. That's not, beneficial for me and it's not a part of the protocol. So you have to, like again, you just have to know your body and know what's best for your body and to be able to deal with it.
So when it comes to I want to talk about your fitness and health more
Mhm.
because I wanted to know what type of regimens do you do now? Do you do training? Do you offer that for others to get better at working out if they're new to this? Like,
Mhm. Yes, I totally advocate working out. Um, It also helps like ease your muscles if you're having muscle tension. Primarily for me, it helps me focus on something else other than the illness.
Right.
So if I can focus on whether it be AKA, whether it be working, whether it be working out, family time, I tend to focus on those other areas and not the illness. Um, and so being in the gym and seeing what I can do and pushing myself to even do more, that brings me joy. So if
Yeah.
and I go to a boutique gym where it's very small groups, very, we have a trainer and if they're squatting a certain amount, I want to squat that same amount. And now,
Wow.
I do it in moderation, of course, because I have lupus, I have, joint and muscle issues. So if my knees won't allow me to do it, that's totally fine. I'll go, down to another, weight class. But if I'm able to do it, I want to do it. And so that's my motto in the gym. So I like to work out for that reason. Um, and I also work out with like 20-year-olds and early 30s people. I'm 45. So to be able to work out with them, it gives me like motivation to show me that I can do it. Like I'm not handicapped. I have
Right.
full control over my limbs for the most part. And so working out it gives me motivation to keep moving, much like school did. Working out does the same thing for me. Now, there are times where, the lupus may get, and I won't even say it's lupus now because my doctors tell me we are already in some form of remission for the lupus. Our lupus is very, very standard and low. And so it's not necessarily the lupus, but I do have, pain in my joints from years of having lupus. So I do physical therapy at certain times of the year because, my knees will bother me or my shoulder or, my elbow, my arm, or something like that. So I add that in to the working out to make sure that, I'm, still up to par. And that's been working for me thus far.
I want to be a gym baddie so bad. Like, I tell myself, like, "Oh, I'm gonna get this YMCA membership so I can go to the gym because I have a one-year-old and I need somebody to keep her." And I just still haven't signed up, but I wanna do it so bad because I
Yeah.
hear so many good things when it comes to improving lupus symptoms, even when it comes to just the stress aspect of it all, being able to reduce stress, by working out, and I get what you're saying, it's finding something else to focus on besides just the disease. And for some people, that's very hard to do, but I find joy in focusing on other things too, at the same time without neglecting lupus either.
Right. Right.
Okay, so what advice would you say to someone newly diagnosed with lupus who's struggling to see it out to the future?
First piece of advice is get yourself the right doctors.
Oh, that's a good one.
The doctors you start off with don't have to be your doctors. If you
That's right.
you have to have a connection with your doctors. I have a connection. The rheumatologist I've been with, and I've been with her ever since I moved back to Atlanta. She knows me. She knows my body. She knows everything. And when I call her or I go on the portal, and tell her things, she'll say either, take a Tylenol, lay down, or come in, whenever one. And same thing goes for my nephrologist. He knows me like back and forth. He knew that I like to work out. So he didn't like negatively impact that. He was like, you gonna work out, you gonna do what you want to do anyway. But when those times come and the kidney is being impacted, I'm gonna need you to settle down. And
Yeah.
so you have that camaraderie for that. So that's the first piece of advice. Find yourself the right doctor. Secondly, a sense of self-care for yourself. That could be absent of working out, absent of any other thing. Like, what is your self-care practice? Is it meditation? Is it going to church? Is it prayer? Is it shopping? What or self-care? And for me, it was shopping and skincare. I would book a facial in a minute. I would book to the mall and shop whenever I needed to. So that's the practice your self-care. And then the last one piece of advice I would say is to focus on healing,
Yeah.
not treatment, not what the doctor says. Focus on your own healing and be vigilant in trying to get to that point of your healing. There are so many advances in lupus nowadays that, there are going to be treatments here and there, but you need to focus on your total body, total health healing, your mindset, your physical, your emotional, everything, and keep that in the forefront of what you're doing. I truly believe that lupus is controllable. There are, outliers out there, but I do believe if you take your medicine, you find a method that works for you as far as self-care and taking good care of yourself and, staying diligent on what you need to do. And so those are my recommendations for anybody, suggestions for anybody like starting this journey. And also stay in the now. Don't look down the road because they're going to tell you what's going to happen in the future. Stay in the now. If you're feeling good this month, you are feeling good this month. Don't worry about what's to come 3 months from now, 6 months from now. Just stay in the now.
I love those. Those are good ones. So, are there any other offers or things like that where people can find you and connect with you if they wanted to speak with you?
Sure. I am on Instagram and TikTok as CY Atkins. That's CYATKINS. I also have my own website, simplycharisma.net. That's my skincare and aesthetics website. And then I also have my own lupus website, my lupus and kidney journey website. And that is charisma.com. I had to remember it. So those are my ways. I'm active on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok all the time. So I'm answering questions. People can DM me any questions that they have. If they want some advice or need some suggestions. I'm also, able to do that. I'm not a medical doctor. I am a science doctor, so I won't give you any medical advice, but I will give you the pros and cons of what the science is saying. So that can help people understand either what their doctors are trying to tell them or what they're feeling. I could provide some scientific consultation on that regard.
Well, that was awesome. I love this. So thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Lupus Speaks podcast. I hope you found this conversation with charisma insightful and impactful with good tools that you can use. And until next time, you guys, peace and be intentional. Bye.
As we wrap up another episode of Lupus Speaks, I hope you are leaving with renewed inspiration and a belief that dreams are attainable despite lupus or any chronic illness. Let's keep the conversation going by connecting with us at Lupus Speaks on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Please remember you are not alone on this journey and that your dreams are not defined by lupus. They're powered by your strength and determination. So until next time, you guys, peace and be intentional.